Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it, then let's evaluate together. Daisy's Diner sat like a beacon on a quiet corner of Sweet Auburn, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the early morning haze. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of sizzling bacon, fresh coffee, and warm cornbread straight from the oven. The walls were a patchwork of history, framed photos of Atlanta's civil rights heroes, a faded poster for a long-ago jazz festival, and a chalkboard specials menu that hadn't changed in years. The jukebox hummed with a low Nina Simone track, her voice weaving through the clatter of plates and the soft laughter of early risers. I, Ethan Liang, stood by my usual corner booth, my heart heavier than the chipped mug cooling on the table. In my hand was an envelope, simple and unmarked except for one word written in my careful scrawl. Nia. She was across the room, her braids catching the light as she leaned over a table, joking with an old man about his usual order. Nia Carter, the woman who'd turned my world upside down without ever knowing it. Her smile was sunlight, her voice a melody that could make even the grumpiest customer crack a grin. She didn't know I was the CEO of ApexTech, a tech empire worth billions, or that my face graced magazine covers from Forbes to Fast Company. To her, I was just Ethan, the quiet guy in a black hoodie who liked his coffee black and his cornbread with a side of bacon. And that's how I wanted it, until now. I set the envelope down, tucked beside the half-eaten plate she hadn't cleared yet, and glanced at her one last time. Her apron was tied loose, her sneakers scuffed from long shifts, but she moved with a grace that made the diner feel alive. The letter wasn't a confession. Not exactly. It didn't spill my secrets or beg for her love. It was a thank you, for her kindness, for the way she made everyone feel seen, for teaching me that real wealth isn't counted in dollars. I'd written it last night in my midtown penthouse, the city lights mocking me as I tried to capture what she meant. Now, with the morning crowd trickling in, I knew it was time to go. Not because I'd given up, but because I'd learned something bigger. Sometimes, the truest love is letting someone shine without casting your shadow. I slipped out the door, the bell jingling softly behind me, and stepped into the Atlanta dawn. The streets of Sweet Auburn were waking up. Vendors setting up carts, a busker strumming a guitar, the air sharp with the promise of a new day. My car waited a block away, plain and unassuming, nothing like the fleet I kept for boardroom life. As I walked, I felt lighter, like I'd left a piece of myself in that diner, but it was the right piece, the part that needed to stay. What Nia had given me, without ever knowing, was worth more than any deal I'd ever closed. But to understand why I walked away, why I left that letter instead of my heart, you need to know how it all began. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about love. It's about finding what matters when everything else falls away. Let's go back to the start. My name's Ethan Liang, and I'm the guy who turned a coding hobby into ApexTech, a tech giant that powers half the apps on your phone. At 36, I'd built a $50 billion empire from a cramped apartment in East Point, where my parents ran a laundry shop and dreamed bigger for me. Mom used to iron shirts until midnight. Dad balanced the books by hand, and I was the kid who swore I'd make their sacrifices worth it. I did. Penthouse in Midtown, private jet at DeKalb Peachtree, invites to every gala from Buckhead to downtown. Forbes called me tech's quiet genius, and I leaned into it, thinking success was the answer to everything. Spoiler, it wasn't. The truth is, winning got lonely. My world was all glass offices and calculated handshakes, where every smile came with a price tag. I'd go to cocktail parties at the Fox Theater, nodding at investors while they pitched ideas I'd already heard, and come home to a penthouse so quiet it echoed. I dated here and there, models, execs, women who saw the CEO before the man, but it never stuck. I told myself I didn't need love, that I was fine building an empire. Then I found Daisy's diner, and everything I thought I knew got turned on its head. It was a morning like any other, except it wasn't. My driver, Marcus, took a detour through Sweet Auburn to dodge a jam on Peachtree, and there it was, a squat brick building with a neon sign that flickered daisies. The windows were fogged from the heat inside, and a handwritten board out front promised, "Best grits in ATL." I don't know why I told Marcus to stop. Maybe I was tired of overpriced espresso bars where baristas spelled my name wrong on purpose, hoping for a tip. Maybe I just wanted something real. Whatever it was, I walked in, the bell above the door jingling, and my life changed. The diner was a time capsule. Checkered floor, red vinyl booths, a counter lined with regulars sipping coffee like it was a ritual. The air smelled of grease and sugar, and a jukebox played something low and soulful, maybe Erykah Badu. I slid into a corner booth, my hoodie pulled low, trying to disappear. That's when I saw her, Nia Carter, moving through the chaos like she owned it. She was tall, her skin a warm brown that glowed under the fluorescent lights. Her braids tied back with a green scarf that matched her apron. She carried a coffee pot in one hand, a stack of menus in the other, and when she laughed at something a kid said, it was like the whole room lit up. "Hey, welcome in," she said, spotting me. Her voice was smooth, with a hint of Atlanta swagger, like she'd grown up on these streets and loved every inch of them. "Grab any seat, fam. First time here?" I nodded, caught off guard by her ease. "Yeah, just passing through." She grinned, sliding a menu my way. "Well, you picked a good spot. Pancakes are fire, but the cornbread'll change your life. What's your vibe?" I blinked, my usual boardroom confidence nowhere to be found. "Cornbread sounds good," I said lamely. "And coffee. Black." "Man of few words," she teased, scribbling on her pad. "I got you. Be right back." I watched her go, weaving between tables, calling out to a guy in a construction vest, "Trey, you still betting on them Falcons?" and slipping a lollipop to a kid coloring at the counter. She didn't just serve food. She served warmth, like every person in that diner was family. When she brought my coffee, her bracelet jingled, and I caught a faint whiff of her perfume, something like vanilla and cedar, that made my head spin. "Cornbread's coming," she said, filling my mug with a practiced pour. "You sure you just passing through? You got that 'I'm staying a while' look?" I smiled, my fingers brushing hers as I took the mug, a jolt running through me that wasn't just caffeine. "Maybe," I said. "Depends on the cornbread." She laughed, a sound that hit me like a shot of bourbon, and moved on to the next table. I sat there, sipping coffee that was better than anything in Midtown, and realized I'd just met someone who didn't know my name, my net worth, or my failures, and I wanted to keep it that way. Daisy's wasn't just a diner. It was a world I didn't know I needed. I started coming every morning, 7 a.m. sharp, trading my suits for hoodies and jeans, my Bentley for a nondescript sedan. Nobody recognized me. Not the regulars arguing over baseball, not Etta, the owner, who'd hum jazz tunes while flipping pancakes. And Nia. She didn't blink at my plain clothes or quiet orders. To her, I was just Ethan, a guy who liked his booth by the window and tipped decently, but not enough to stand out. The diner was alive in ways my office never was. There was Trey, the construction worker who'd ribbed Nia about her sweet tea being too damn sweet, and Miss Loretta, an older woman who'd bring her grandkids and tell stories about marching with MLK. Nia knew them all, their orders, their quirks, their troubles. She'd slip extra bacon to Trey when he looked beat, save a corner slice of pie for Loretta's youngest. And me? She'd tease about my coffee habit. "You're gonna turn into a bean one day, Ethan." And I'd laugh, feeling lighter than I had in years. But it wasn't all easy. ApexTech was a beast, and I was its keeper. A lawsuit was brewing, some startup claiming we'd stolen their code. and my board was on edge, demanding I stay focused. Lila Tran, my CFO and best friend, started noticing my early absences. "Where you sneaking off to, Ethan?" she'd ask, her eyes narrowing over sushi lunches. I'd shrug, say I needed coffee, but she wasn't buying it. And then there was the diner itself, a bubble I wanted to protect. I overheard Nia once, talking to Etta about bills piling up, and I had to stop myself from pulling out my checkbook. That wasn't the point. I didn't want to fix her life. I wanted to be part of it, even if she never knew who I was. That first morning, when Nia handed me a plate of cornbread, golden and steaming, I took a bite and swear it tasted like home. Something I hadn't felt since Mom's kitchen in East Point. "Told you," she said, winking as she refilled my mug. "Life changer, right?" "Right," I said, my voice softer than I meant. She didn't know it, but she was the life changer, not the cornbread. I came back the next day and the next, drawn to her laugh, her ease, the way she made a greasy spoon feel like a sanctuary. But I knew it couldn't stay simple. I was a billionaire playing pretend in a world that didn't know me, and secrets like that don't keep forever. That letter I left on the table wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of what Nia taught me. I'd spent months in her orbit, learning what real strength looked like, and walking away was the hardest thing I'd ever done. If you want to know why I wrote it, why I couldn't stay, and what it cost me to love her from afar, stick around. Because this isn't about winning someone's heart. It's about finding your own. The morning sun spilled through the windows of Daisy's diner, painting the checkered floor in patches of gold. The air was alive with the sizzle of bacon on the grill, the rich aroma of coffee brewing, and the low hum of a jazz tune, maybe Coltrane, drifting from the jukebox in the corner. I sat in my usual booth, the one by the window with a perfect view of Sweet Auburn waking up outside, but my eyes weren't on the street vendors or the mural of MLK across the way. They were on Nia Carter, moving through the diner like she was conducting a symphony, her braids swaying with every step, her smile a beacon that made even the crankiest regulars lighten up. It had been a month since I stumbled into this place, since that first morning when Nia's voice, warm and laced with Atlanta swagger, pulled me out of my midtown bubble and into something real. I, Ethan Liang, CEO of ApexTech, a guy who could shift markets with a single email, was nobody here. Just Ethan, the quiet dude in a hoodie who liked his coffee black and his cornbread with a side of bacon. Every day at 7 a.m., I'd ditch my suits and my driver's Bentley for a beat-up sedan and this corner booth, chasing the feeling Nia gave me without even trying. Today was no different, or so I thought. But as she poured my coffee, her fingers brushing mine for a split second, I felt a spark that wasn't just in my head. It was in my chest, and it was trouble. Let's rewind a bit. That first morning at Daisy's had hooked me, but it was the days after that reeled me in. I started coming every morning, rain or shine, my schedule bent around this 1 hour before the world demanded Ethan Liang, billionaire. ApexTech was a beast. Apps, AI, cloud systems, a $50 billion empire I'd built from a laptop in my mom's laundry shop in East Point. But it was a hungry beast, always needing more. A lawsuit was brewing, some startup claiming we'd ripped off their code, and my board was breathing down my neck to keep things stable. Stable meant no surprises, no scandals, no slipping out of Midtown Towers for coffee in Sweet Auburn. Yet here I was, trading boardrooms for booths, and I didn't regret a second of it. Daisy's was a world apart. The diner wasn't fancy. Scratch tables, vinyl seats patched with duct tape, a ceiling fan that creaked like it was telling stories, but it had soul. Regulars filled the place like family. Trey Brooks, a construction worker with a laugh like a foghorn, Miss Loretta, who'd bring her grandkids and pray over her grits, and Etta Jones, the owner, who'd hum Ella Fitzgerald while flipping pancakes. They all knew each other's lives, whose kid was graduating, whose car broke down, and Nia was the heart of it. She'd glide between tables, her green apron tied loose, calling out orders with a grin that could melt ice. "Trey, you want extra hot sauce, don't play," she'd tease, or slip a lollipop to Loretta's youngest with a wink. She didn't just work here. She held it together, and I couldn't look away. This morning, the diner was buzzing as usual. A group of church ladies in big hats chatted over biscuits. A delivery guy argued about the Braves, and a kid at the counter colored a paper placemat with crayons. I sipped my coffee, pretending to read emails on my phone, but really I was watching Nia. Her braids were tied high today, a few loose ones brushing her neck, and her skin glowed under the diner's lights, warm and rich like the coffee she poured. She moved with a rhythm, quick but never rushed, like she knew exactly where every plate needed to land. When she caught me looking, she didn't flinch, just flashed a smile that hit me like a jolt. "Same old Ethan?" she asked, sliding up with her coffee pot, her voice playful but kind, like she was letting me in on a joke. "Yep," I said, pushing my mug toward her. "You gonna talk me into pancakes yet?" She laughed, filling my cup with a steady hand, the steam curling between us. "Man, you're stubborn. Pancakes are calling your name, but I'll let you stick with cornbread for now." I grinned, my fingers grazing hers as she handed me a napkin, and there it was. A spark, quick and electric like touching a live wire. Her bracelet jingled, and I caught a faint scent of her perfume, something soft like vanilla and cedar that made my head spin for a second. I fumbled the napkin, nearly knocking over my mug, and she raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Coffee's getting to you already?" she teased, resting a hand on her hip. "Or you just distracted?" I swallowed, my usual boardroom cool nowhere to be found. "Maybe it's the company," I said, surprising myself with the half-flirt. Her eyes widened, just a fraction. Then she laughed, a low musical sound that warmed me more than the coffee. "Smooth talker," she said, shaking her head as she moved to the next table. "Eat your cornbread, Ethan." I watched her go, my heart thudding like I'd just run a sprint. It wasn't just her smile or the way she moved, though those didn't hurt. It was how she made this place feel, like you belonged no matter who you were. Trey with his muddy boots, Loretta with her stories, me with my secrets, we were all the same to her. In my world, people saw dollar signs when I walked in. Here, Nia saw me, even if she didn't know my name was plastered across skyscrapers. The mornings piled up, each one a little brighter because of her. I learned Nia's rhythm, how she'd hum Nina Simone when the diner was quiet, how she'd sneak extra bacon onto Trey's plate when he looked worn out, how she'd save the corner piece of cornbread for me because I'd mentioned liking it once. We'd talk, small stuff mostly, her joking about my coffee habit, me asking about the specials, but every word felt like a gift. One day she leaned against my booth during a lull, her apron smudged with flour, and told me about her dream. "Want to know something?" she said, twirling a pen between her fingers. "I'm saving up for a place of my own. A restaurant. Soul food with a twist, maybe some Caribbean vibes like my grandma's jerk chicken. Sweet Auburn's got my heart, you know." I nodded, picturing it, her name on a sign, her laugh filling a room. "Sounds like a plan," I said. "What's stopping you?" She sighed, her smile fading just a touch. "Money, time, life. I'm taking classes at night, business stuff. But it's slow. Gotta keep daisies running for Etta, too. She's family." I wanted to say I could help, that I could write a check and make it happen. But I stopped myself. That wasn't why I was here. Instead, I said, "You'll get there. Bet on it." She looked at me, her eyes searching, like she was trying to figure me out. "You're sweet, Ethan," she said, then pushed off the table as a new customer walked in. "Don't let that cornbread get cold." What they care. Those moments weren't just talk. They were threads, weaving me into her world. But it wasn't all smooth. ApexTech was a pressure cooker. The lawsuit was picking up steam, with lawyers circling like sharks, and Lila was getting sharper with her questions. "You're never in before 9 anymore. she said one day over coffee in my office, the midtown skyline glinting behind her. What's with the disappearing act? Just need a break, I said, dodging her stare. Coffee's better outside, she snorted, tossing her braid back. Bull! You're hiding something, and I'll figure it out. Lila wasn't wrong. I was hiding, but not for the reason she thought. I didn't want the diner to become a headline, didn't want Nia to see me as anything but the guy in the booth. But trouble was already sniffing around. One morning, I caught Trey watching me, his fork paused over his eggs. You a writer or something? He asked Nia when she refilled his juice. Dude's always here, staring like he's taking notes. Nia laughed, glancing my way. Nah, Trey. He's just loyal to my cornbread. Right, Ethan? Right, I said, forcing a smile, but my stomach twisted. Trey's question wasn't hostile, but it was a reminder. I didn't belong here, not really. I was playing a part, and parts get found out. The real shift came a week ago, on a morning when the diner was quieter than usual. A storm had rolled through, leaving the streets slick and the tables half empty. Nia was wiping down the counter, humming something soft, and I was nursing my coffee, pretending to check emails. She slid into the booth across from me, surprising me, her apron folded on her lap. Slow day, she said, resting her chin on her hand. Gives me a second to breathe. What's your deal, Ethan? You're here more than some of my regulars, but I don't know nothing about you. I froze, my thumb hovering over my phone. Not much to know, I said, keeping it light. Just a guy who likes good coffee. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing but playful. Uh-huh. You're hiding something, but I'll let it slide, for now. Tell me one thing, though. Where you from? East Point, I said, the truth slipping out before I could stop it. Grew up helping my mom at her shop. Nothing fancy. Her face softened, like she'd found a piece of me she could hold on to. See? That wasn't so hard. I'm Sweet Auburn, born and raised. My grandma used to take me to jazz joints around here. Said music's how you know you're alive. I smiled, picturing a young Nia swaying to horns and drums. She sounds like a force. She was, Nia said, her voice quieter, then brightened. What about you? Got family keeping you grounded? I hesitated, my mom's face flashing in my mind, her hands rough from years at the laundry, her smile when I'd made it big. Yeah, I said, my mom. She's why I keep going. Nia nodded, like she got it, and for a moment we just sat there, the diner's hum wrapping around us. Then Etta called from the kitchen, and Nia stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. Back to it, she said. Don't run off, Ethan. You're growing on me. She walked away, her braids swinging, and I felt it, a pull, deep and undeniable. I wasn't just charmed by her, I was falling, hard, for the way she carried this place, for the life she dreamed of, for the woman who saw me without knowing my name. But as I watched her laugh with Trey, I knew loving her meant staying invisible. One slip, one headline, and this, whatever it was, could vanish. That morning, when Nia sat across from me, was the first time I let myself believe I could matter to her, even as nobody. But nobody doesn't stay nobody forever, and the world I'd built was waiting to pull me back. If you're wondering how I kept my secret, and what it cost me to stay in her orbit, keep following along, because Nia wasn't just changing my mornings, she was changing me. Daisy's diner was quieter than usual, the morning rush slowed by a drizzle that left Sweet Auburn's streets slick and gray. The jukebox played something soft, maybe Billie Holiday, her voice curling through the air like smoke, and the smell of frying eggs and coffee grounded the place in its usual warmth. I sat in my corner booth, my hoodie pulled low, my phone open to an ApexTech report I wasn't reading. My eyes, as always, were on Nia Carter. She moved between tables with her easy grace, her braids tied back with a yellow scarf today, her apron smudged with flour from helping Etta in the kitchen. She laughed at something Trey said, her voice bright against the rain's hum, and I felt that familiar pull in my chest, like she was the only thing keeping me tethered to the ground. It had been 6 weeks since I first walked into this diner, since Nia's smile rewrote every rule I'd lived by. I, Ethan Liang, the guy who ran a $50 billion tech empire, was hooked on these mornings, on her warmth, on the way she made me feel like just Ethan, not the CEO plastered across Forbes. But the cracks were starting to show. My world, midtown offices, lawsuits, boardroom battles, was pressing in, and I was slipping. I'd tried to get closer to Nia, to let her see me without breaking the spell, but every move fell flat. Worse, people were noticing me. Trey with his side eye, Lila with her questions, and now a stranger who'd been at the counter too long, watching me like he knew something. I was playing a dangerous game, and the stakes were higher than I'd realized. The trouble started a week ago, though I didn't see it coming. I'd gotten bolder, or maybe just desperate. Nia and I had settled into a rhythm. Coffee, cornbread, small talk that felt bigger every day. She'd tease me about my boring order. I'd ask about her night classes, and sometimes, when the diner was slow, she'd lean against my booth and share a piece of her world. Last Tuesday, she told me about her grandma's jerk chicken recipe, her eyes lighting up as she described the spices. "One day, Ethan," she'd said, "I'm gonna cook that for my own place. You better show up." "Count me in," I'd said, meaning it more than she knew. Those moments were gold, but they weren't enough. I wanted her to see me, not the billionaire, but the guy who listened, who cared. So I started leaving hints, testing the water. One morning, I left my laptop open to a TechCrunch article about ApexTech's latest launch, my name in the headline. Nia glanced at it while refilling my coffee and just smiled. "Work looks intense," she said, closing the lid gently. "Take a break, fam. Breakfast's for chilling." I'd laughed, but it stung. She didn't care about the article, didn't even skim it. Part of me was relieved. She still saw me. But another part ached. What was I doing? Trying to impress her without blowing my cover? It was a tightrope, and I was wobbling. The next day, I tried again, taking a fake call at my booth, tossing out buzzwords, acquisition, valuation, loud enough for her to hear. She just turned down the jukebox, assuming I needed quiet, and went back to wiping tables. I felt like an idiot, a kid waving his hand in class, unnoticed. But it wasn't just Nia's indifference that had me on edge. ApexTech was a pressure cooker, and I was losing my grip. The lawsuit, a rival claiming we'd stolen their AI code, was heating up, with depositions looming and investors getting jittery. Lila Tran, my CFO and the only person who could call me out without blinking, was on to me. We'd met for lunch at a taco joint in Ponce City Market, the air thick with cumin and chatter, and she'd cut straight to it. "You're ghosting us, Ethan," she said, tossing a tortilla chip at me. "Skipping morning calls, dodging the board. Where you at every day? Don't say coffee." I shrugged, picking at my carnitas. "Just clearing my head. It's fine." "It's not fine," she snapped, her braids swinging as she leaned forward. "The lawsuit's a mess and Richard's itching to play hardball. You're out here daydreaming while we're fighting fires." I didn't answer, because she was right. I was slipping, letting daisies pull me away from the empire I'd built. But Lila didn't know what Nia's smile did to me, how it made the noise of my life go quiet. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Instead, I promised to focus, knowing I'd be back at the diner tomorrow. This morning, the diner felt different, like the air was holding its breath. The rain kept the crowd thin, just Trey nursing a plate of eggs, Miss Loretta reading her Bible over tea, and a new guy at the counter, his ball cap low, scribbling in a notebook. I didn't like his vibe. Too still, too watchful, but I pushed it aside when Nia slid up, her coffee pot steaming. "Rough day already?" she asked, nodding at my untouched cornbread. Her voice was teasing, but her eyes lingered, like she was trying to read me. "Nah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." "Deep thoughts for 7 a.m., she said, filling my mug. Her fingers brushed mine, warm and quick, and I felt that jolt again, like my body knew something my brain was too slow to catch. Her scarf slipped, showing the curve of her neck, and I had to look away before I got lost in it. "You gotta share one of these days," she added, smirking. "Can't keep all that mystery forever." I laughed, softer than I meant. "Maybe one day." She moved on, calling out to Trey, "You finishing that or just staring at it?" And I watched her, my coffee cooling. I wanted to tell her everything. East Point, my mom, the empire I'd built, the way she made me feel alive. But every time I got close, I saw her world, this diner, these people, this simplicity, and I froze. What if the truth changed it? What if she saw the money, the headlines, and stopped seeing me? That's when I noticed the guy at the counter again. He was staring. Not at Nia, but at me. His pen hadn't moved in minutes, and when our eyes met, he didn't look away. My gut twisted. I'd been careful, no suits, no flashy watches, no driver parked out front. But I wasn't invisible. Not really. I pulled my hoodie tighter, trying to focus on Nia as she joked with Miss Loretta, but the guy's gaze was a weight I couldn't shake. The real trouble came an hour later when the diner was near empty. Nia was wiping down tables, humming to herself, and I was about to leave when Trey leaned over from his booth, his voice low but clear. "Yo, Nia," he said, nodding my way. "What's with your boy over there? He's here every damn day, looking like he's writing a book about you." Nia glanced at me, her cloth pausing mid-swipe, and laughed. "Trey, chill. Ethan's just loyal to my cornbread. Ain't no book." Trey didn't laugh. "I'm just saying, he's got eyes on you. Don't seem like no regular to me." I froze, my coffee mug halfway to my mouth. Nia's eyes met mine, playful but curious, like she was seeing me for the first time. "He's cool," she said, but there was a question in her voice, one I didn't know how to answer. She walked over, leaning against my booth, her arms crossed. "He's got a point," she said, her tone light but probing. "You're practically furniture now, Ethan. What's keeping you coming back? Don't say the coffee." I swallowed, my throat dry. This was my shot. To say something real. To let her in. But the guy at the counter was still there, his cap low, and Trey's words echoed in my head. I was a billionaire hiding in plain sight, and one wrong move could blow it all up. "You're right," I said, dodging. "It's the cornbread. Best in Atlanta." She rolled her eyes, but her smile stayed. "Keep your secrets then. But I'm watching you." She walked away, her laugh trailing behind, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. But when I looked up, the guy at the counter was gone, his notebook left open on the bar. I couldn't see what he'd written, but I didn't need to. I knew trouble when I saw it. I left the diner faster than usual, the rain cold against my face as I headed for my car. Sweet Auburn was waking up, vendors shouting, a bus rumbling by, but I barely noticed. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Lila. "Board's freaking out. Where are you?" I ignored it, my mind stuck on Nia, on Trey's suspicion, on the guy who'd watched me too long. I'd come to Daisy's to escape, to feel something real, but I was bringing my world with me. Lawsuits, headlines, secrets that could hurt her more than me. That morning, when Nia looked at me like she wanted answers, I'd chickened out. I'd stayed safe, stayed nobody, but nobody doesn't last forever. I was falling for her, her laugh, Her fight, the way she carried this place like it was hers, and it was making me reckless. If I wasn't careful, I'd lose more than my mornings. I'd lose her, and the one place that felt like home. That moment, when Trey called me out and Nia's eyes searched mine, was the first crack in the dream I'd built at Daisy's. It wasn't the end, not yet, but it was a warning. If you're wondering what happened next, how I walked that line between love and lies, stick with me. Because the truth was closing in, and it wasn't going to wait. The rain had stopped, leaving Sweet Auburn's streets gleaming under a late morning sun. Daisy's diner stood proud on its corner, but inside, the air felt heavy, like the place was holding its breath. The jukebox was off for once, the only sounds the clink of dishes and the low murmur of a handful of regulars. I sat in my corner booth, my coffee untouched, my eyes fixed on Nia Carter. She moved slower today, her braids pulled back tight, her apron knotted like armor. Her smile was still there, but it was strained, like a light flickering under pressure. The diner was in trouble, real trouble, and Nia was carrying it all. It had been 2 months since I first walked into this place, since Nia's warmth pulled me out of my billion-dollar bubble and gave me something to hold on to. I, Ethan Liang, CEO of ApexTech, had spent every morning here, hiding in plain sight. Falling for a woman who didn't know my name was synonymous with power. But the cracks were widening. A lawsuit was choking my company. A reporter was sniffing around. And now Daisy's itself was on the ropes. Etta, the owner, had a heart attack last week, and Nia was fighting to keep the diner afloat. Watching her now, pouring coffee for Trey with a forced grin, I knew I couldn't just sit here anymore. I had to do something, even if it meant risking the one place that felt like home. The trouble hit hard and fast. I'd come in one morning to find the diner half empty, the usual buzz replaced by a hush. Nia was behind the counter, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice tight as she talked about hospital bills. Etta, the heart and soul of Daisy's, was in ICU, hooked up to machines after a heart attack that had come out of nowhere. She was stable now, but the diner was reeling. Nia had stepped up, running shifts, balancing books, keeping the grills hot, but it wasn't enough. I overheard her telling Miss Loretta about a developer circling, some suit who wanted to buy the lot and turn it into condos. "They think Sweet Auburn's just real estate," Nia had said, her voice bitter. "They don't get what this place means." I'd sat there, my cornbread cooling, feeling useless. In my world, problems had solutions, money, lawyers, deals. I could have written a check to cover Etta's bills, bought the lot outright, but that wasn't why I was here. Nia didn't need a savior, and I didn't want to be one. I wanted to be part of her fight, not the guy who ended it. But doing nothing wasn't an option either, not when she looked like she was carrying the world. ApexTech wasn't helping my headspace. The lawsuit was a nightmare, with depositions piling up and our stock wobbling. Lila Tran, my CFO, and the only person who could read me like a book, was losing patience. We'd met at a food truck court near West End, the air thick with barbecue smoke and laughter, but her vibe was all business. "Ethan, you're checked out," she said, stabbing a fry at me. "Richard's ready to call a vote if you don't get your head in the game. Where you at every morning, and don't say coffee." I sighed, dodging her eyes. "Just a diner, helps me think." "A diner?" She raised an eyebrow, her chopsticks pausing. "You're blowing off billion-dollar decisions for grits? What's really going on?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't. Lila didn't know about Nia, about the way her laugh made my penthouse feel like a cage. I promised to focus, but we both knew I was lying. The diner was my anchor, and Nia was the reason it held. Back at Daisy's, the days blurred into a grind. Nia was everywhere, flipping pancakes, scrubbing counters, smiling through exhaustion. She'd started a fundraiser, putting up flyers for a community night to cover Etta's bills. "We're family here," she'd told Trey, taping a poster to the window. Family don't quit. But I saw the shadows under her eyes, the way her hand shook when she thought no one was looking. She was breaking, and it killed me to watch. I tried to help in small ways. I'd tip extra, not enough to raise flags, but enough to ease a shift. Once, when she dropped a stack of plates and cursed under her breath, I jumped up to help, our hands brushing as we grabbed the same shard. Her skin was warm, her breath close, and for a second, I forgot where I was, caught in the cedar and vanilla scent of her. "Thanks, Ethan," she said, her voice soft, and her eyes held mine longer than usual, like she saw something new. I mumbled something dumb and went back to my booth, my heart racing like I dodged a bullet, or missed one. But the real shift came last night, at the fundraiser Nia had pulled together. Daisy's was packed, every table full, the air thick with the smell of fried chicken and collards from a potluck spread. String lights hung across the ceiling, and a local jazz trio played in the corner, their horns bouncing off the walls. Kids ran between chairs, volunteers passed out lemonade, and Nia was everywhere, hugging folks, refilling plates, her smile brighter than I'd seen in days. She wore a red dress instead of her apron, her braids loose, and when she laughed, it was like the room turned up the volume. I'd come as just another face, my hoodie swapped for a plain button-up, blending into the crowd. I didn't belong here, not really, but I couldn't stay away. Nia took the mic halfway through, standing by the counter, the lights catching her like a spotlight. "Y'all know what Daisy's means," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "It's not just food, it's home. Etta's our heart, and we're not losing her, not losing this. We fight for what's ours, always." The crowd cheered, fists raised, and I felt it, a fire I hadn't known I was missing. Nia wasn't just saving a diner. She was saving a piece of Sweet Auburn, of herself. Her words hit me hard, like they were meant for me too. I'd spent my life fighting for ApexTech, for my parents' dreams. But what was I fighting for now? Money? Power? Or something real, like the woman standing there, pouring her soul into a room full of strangers? I stayed till the end, watching her hug Miss Loretta, dance with a kid to the trio's last song. I wanted to tell her I'd help, that I could make it all okay, but I didn't. Instead, I slipped a cash donation into the jar, anonymously through a fake name, and left before she saw me. Back in my penthouse, the skyline cold and distant, I made a call. Not as Ethan, the diner regular, but as Ethan Liang, the man who could move mountains. By morning, Etta's hospital bills were covered through a community fund I'd set up, and the developer sniffing around the diner lot got an offer he couldn't refuse. From a shell company I owned, Daisy's was safe, and Nia would never know I'd touched it. But it wasn't that simple. I'd crossed a line, and I knew it. Helping Nia felt right, but it also felt like control, like I was writing her story instead of letting her live it. I'd seen how she fought, how she'd stayed up nights balancing books, how she'd rallied a community to save what mattered. She didn't need me to fix her life. She needed me to believe in it, and I wasn't sure I could keep hiding. Not when every morning brought me closer to spilling the truth. Trouble was brewing outside too. Lila had called me out again, her voice sharp over a late-night text. "Board's meeting tomorrow. Richard's pissed about your distractions. You better show up." The lawsuit was tightening its grip, and rumors were swirling. Someone had spotted me in Sweet Auburn, not as a CEO, but as a guy who didn't belong. Then there was the stranger from last week, the one with the notebook. I hadn't seen him since, but I'd caught a name on a blog post. Malik Jones, a local reporter with a nose for stories. If he was digging, he'd find me. And if he found me, he'd find Nia. This morning, as Nia poured my coffee, I saw the weight she carried. "You holding up?" I asked, keeping it casual, though my chest ached to say more. She sighed, resting the pot on the table, her bracelet jingling. "Trying to. Etta's better, but this place, it's a lot. Gotta keep it going for her, you know." "You're doing it," I said, meaning it. You're stronger than you think." She looked at me, her eyes searching, like she wanted to believe it. "Thanks, Ethan. You're sweet, staying loyal through all this." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Loyal wasn't the half of it. I was in love with her. Not just her smile, but her fight, her heart, the way she made Sweet Auburn feel like a universe. But loving her meant keeping my distance, and I wasn't sure I could anymore. Not when I'd changed her world without asking, not when Malik's shadow was creeping closer. That fundraiser, when Nia stood up and spoke her truth, was the moment I knew I couldn't stay on the sidelines. I'd helped her in secret, but it wasn't enough. Not for her, not for me. The truth was knocking, and I was running out of places to hide. If you're wondering how I faced what came next, and what it cost to keep loving her from afar, stick with me. Because the fight was just beginning, and it was about to get real. The sky over Atlanta was bruised with clouds, the kind that promised a storm but held back just to keep you guessing. I stood outside Daisy's diner, the neon sign flickering like it was tired, my breath fogging in the early morning chill. Inside, the usual hum was gone. No jazz from the jukebox, no clatter of plates, just a heavy quiet that matched the weight in my chest. I'd come here every day for months, chasing Nia Carter's smile, hiding who I was to feel something real. But last night, it all came crashing down. A blog post by Malik Jones, a reporter with a nose for trouble, had blown my cover. Tech Billionaire's secret hideout. What's Ethan Liang doing at Sweet Auburn Diner? The photo was blurry. Me in my booth, Nia pouring coffee. But it was enough. Enough to turn her world upside down, to make her question everything I'd never said. I, Ethan Liang, CEO of ApexTech, had built a $50 billion empire, but I couldn't build a bridge to Nia now. The article didn't name her outright, but it threw out enough hints. Local waitress, community hero, Sweet Auburn staple, to set tongues wagging. Social media was a mess. Some posts gushed about a cute love story. Others tore into Nia with venom I couldn't stomach, calling her names, questioning why a billionaire would slum it with her. Every word was a knife, and I'd handed Malik the blade by being careless. I'd helped her in secret, saving daisies, covering Etta's bills, but I'd kept my truth locked away, and now it was out, raw and ugly. I needed to see her, to explain, to fix this. But as I pushed open the diner's door, the bell jingling like a warning, I knew some things can't be fixed. The fallout started hours after the fundraiser, the night I'd seen Nia shine like a star, rallying Sweet Auburn to save daisies. I'd gone home to my penthouse, the city lights cold through my windows, feeling like I'd done something right. Etta's bills paid, the diner's lot secured, all without Nia knowing it was me. But my phone lit up at midnight with a text from Lila Tran, my CFO and best friend. "Check your email, now." Attached was Malik's article, already spreading like wildfire across blogs, Twitter, even local news sites. The headline burned into me. But the comments were worse. Hateful, racist digs at Nia, twisting her into someone she wasn't. Gold digger, they called her. Charity case. I wanted to smash my phone, to call every outlet and shut it down. But it was too late. The world had seen us, and it wasn't kind. I'd tried texting Nia, a clumsy, "I'm sorry, can we talk?" But she didn't reply. I didn't blame her. She'd woken up to a storm she didn't ask for. Her name dragged through the mud because of me. ApexTech was no better. The lawsuit was reaching a boiling point, and Richard, our board's bulldog, was livid. He'd left a voicemail, his voice tight. "Ethan, this is a disaster. Investors are spooked, and you're playing coffee shop games. Fix it, or we will." Lila tried to calm me, meeting me at a dive bar in Vine City, the air thick with beer and regret. "You knew this could happen," she said, sliding me a soda. "Hiding's not a plan, Ethan. You love her. Why didn't you tell her who you are?" I stared at the table, my hands clenched. Because I didn't want her to see the money. I wanted her to see me. Lila sighed, her braids swinging as she leaned back. And now she sees nothing but lies. You gotta talk to her, man, before it's too late. But it felt too late already. I'd driven by Daisy's at dawn, hoping to catch Nia, but the diner was dark, the fundraisers' lights gone. Now, standing here, I wasn't sure what I'd say. Sorry I ruined your life. I love you, but I'm a coward. The bell jingled as I stepped inside, and Nia looked up from the counter, her face a mask of exhaustion and anger. The diner was nearly empty, just Miss Loretta in a corner, stirring her tea, and Trey at the bar, his eyes narrowing when he saw me. Nia's apron was on, but her braids were loose, her scarf missing, like she hadn't bothered with her usual spark. She didn't smile, didn't move, just watched me cross the room, her arms crossed tight. "Ethan," she said, her voice low, sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. "You got some nerve showing up here." I stopped, my hands useless at my sides. "Nia, I'm sorry, I saw the article. I didn't mean for what?" She cut in, stepping around the counter, her eyes blazing. "For lying to me. For letting me think you were just some guy when you're out here running an empire. Or for dragging my name through the dirt without a heads up." Her words hit like punches, each one true. I'd known Malik was poking around. I'd seen him that day at the counter, his notebook open, but I'd ignored it, thinking I could keep my worlds separate. Now Nia was paying the price. "I didn't lie," I said, my voice cracking. I didn't tell you everything. I wanted this, us, here, to be real." "Real?" She laughed, bitter and raw, nothing like the sound I loved. "Ethan, I've been pouring your coffee for months, telling you about my life, my dreams. And you sat there, knowing who you are, letting me look like a fool. You think that's real?" Trey stood, his chair scraping, but Nia waved him off, her focus locked on me. The diner felt smaller, the walls closing in, Miss Loretta's teaspoon the only sound. I took a step closer, desperate. "Nia, you're not a fool. You're the strongest person I know. I didn't tell you because I was scared you'd see the money, the headlines, and not me." Her eyes softened for a second, then hardened again. "Don't put that on me," she said, her voice low. "I grew up in Sweet Auburn, Ethan. I've dealt with worse than gossip. I didn't need you to protect me. I needed you to trust me, but you didn't." I flinched, her truth cutting deeper than Malik's words. She was right. I'd hidden behind my hoodie, my silence, thinking I was keeping her safe when I was just keeping myself comfortable. I'd watched her fight for daisies, for Etta, for her community, and I'd helped in shadows, paying bills, saving the lot, because I didn't trust her to handle my world. "I trust you," I said, my voice breaking. "I love you, Nia. That's why I stayed." Her breath caught, her arms dropping, and for a moment I thought I'd reached her. But then she shook her head, a tear slipping free. "Love don't look like this," she said, stepping back. "Love don't hide. Love don't let people call me names and question my worth because you couldn't be honest." The air went still, my chest hollow. I wanted to argue, to beg, but her eyes said it all. Hurt, betrayal, a wall I'd built myself. "Nia, please," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Let me fix this." She walked to the door, holding it open, the morning light harsh behind her. "You can't," she said, her voice steady now, final. "I don't need your money or your fixes, Ethan. I need you to leave." I stood there, the diner's warmth gone cold, and nodded. There was nothing left to say. I walked out, the bell jingling like a goodbye, and didn't look back. The street was empty, Sweet Auburn's murals staring down like judges, and I felt like I'd lost more than Nia. I'd lost myself. The aftermath was brutal. By noon, Malik's story had hit every outlet, from local blogs to national tech sites. Twitter was a war zone. #Sweet Auburn secret trending with memes, hate, and a few defenders calling Nia a queen. But the damage was done. A donor pulled funding from Nia's night classes, spooked by the drama, and daisies took a hit, some regulars staying away to dodge the whispers. Nia's phone, I heard through Trey, was blowing up. Reporters, trolls, even well-meaning folks asking if she was okay. She wasn't. I'd done that. ApexTech was no refuge. Richard called an emergency board meeting, his face red as he waved a printout of Malik's article. "This is a circus, Ethan," he barked, the midtown skyline gray behind him. "Our stock's down 2 points, and the lawsuit's bleeding us. You're out here playing Romeo while we clean up your mess." I stared at the table, my hands clenched. "It's not a game," I said, quieter than I meant. "She's not a mess." "Then end it," he snapped. "Issue a statement, deny the story, get back to work." Lila caught my eye across the table, her look saying, "Don't you dare." I didn't answer Richard because I couldn't. Denying Nia felt like denying air. The meeting dragged on. Charts, threats, PR plans. But I was already gone, stuck on her face, her tears, the door she'd held open. I drove to West End that night, parking near a park where kids played despite the drizzle. The air smelled of wet grass and barbecue from a nearby truck, but it didn't lift me. I kept seeing Nia's eyes, hearing her voice. "I need you to leave." I'd tried to protect her, to keep her world safe, but I'd broken it instead. My phone buzzed. Lila again. "Talk to her, idiot. Don't let this be it." But how do you talk when you've lost the right? I thought about my mom, how she'd worked herself raw to give me a shot. I'd built ApexTech for her, for the kid in East Point who swore he'd make it. But what was it worth if I couldn't be honest with the one person who made me feel whole? Nia deserved better than secrets, better than me, and I wasn't sure I could give it. Not now. Maybe not ever. That moment in Daisy's, when Nia told me to go, was the hardest I'd ever faced. It wasn't just her. It was the truth, raw and unforgiving, showing me how far I'd fallen. If you're wondering if there was any way back, any chance to undo the damage, hold on, because what came next was a storm I didn't see coming, and it changed everything. Piedmont Park was quiet under a late afternoon sky, the Atlanta skyline a distant shimmer across the lake. The air smelled of cut grass and barbecue from a nearby cookout, and kids laughed as they chased a soccer ball, their voices fading into the breeze. I sat on a bench by the water, my hoodie swapped for a plain jacket, my hands clutching a small leather notebook, my mom's old recipe book, filled with her handwriting from our East Point days. It was my last shot, my way of saying what words couldn't. I, Ethan Liang, the guy who'd built ApexTech into a $50 billion empire, had spent months hiding in Daisy's diner, loving Nia Carter from the shadows. But after yesterday's bombshell, I couldn't hide anymore. She was slipping away, and I had one chance to make things right. Not for me, but for her. It had been a week since Nia told me to leave, since her tear-streaked face and the diner's jingling bell marked the end of everything I'd thought we could be. Malik Jones's article had torn through Sweet Auburn like a storm, dragging Nia's name through the mud and exposing my secret. I wasn't just Ethan, the coffee guy. I was a billionaire who'd lied by omission. I'd hurt her, not with words, but with silence, and the guilt was heavier than any boardroom loss. Then Lila Tran, my CFO and lifeline, dropped a bombshell last night over beers in Vine City. Nia was up for a job in New Orleans, a chance to run a kitchen at a soul food restaurant with national buzz. "She's thinking of leaving, Ethan," Lila had said, her eyes sharp. "You gonna let her go without a fight?" The news hit like a freight train. Nia gone. Her laugh, her fight, her dream of a Sweet Auburn restaurant, vanishing to another city because I'd made her feel like she wasn't enough. I couldn't let that happen. Not without showing her what she meant, not without giving her something real. So here I was, waiting for her at a community cook-off she'd organized, ready to lay it all bare, or as close as I could get without breaking her world again. The cook-off was in full swing when I arrived. The park transformed into a festival of food and soul. Tents lined the grass, their tables piled with fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread that rivaled daisies. A jazz band played on a small stage, their horns bouncing off the trees, and families milled around, plates in hand, kids weaving through the crowd with balloons. The air was thick with laughter and spices, and Sweet Auburn's spirit was everywhere. Murals on food trucks, elders sharing stories, Nia's touch in every detail. She'd pulled this together to raise money for Daisy's and Etta's recovery, proving she didn't need me to save her. She never had. I spotted her near a tent, her red scarf bright against a denim jacket, her braids loose and catching the sun. She was serving peach cobbler, joking with Trey Brooks about his sweet tooth, her smile warm but guarded, like she was holding herself together for the crowd. My chest ached. She was still fighting, still shining, even after I dimmed her light. I stayed back, blending into the bustle, my notebook heavy in my pocket. I'd come to give it to her, not as a grand gesture, but as a truth, something of mine, something real to show I believed in her dream. The lawsuit at ApexTech was finally cooling, settled out of court, but not without scars. Richard and the board had pushed for my head, but Lila rallied enough votes to keep me CEO, though I wasn't sure I wanted it anymore. The empire I'd built felt hollow without Nia's mornings, without the diner's hum. Malik's article had faded from the headlines, but the damage lingered. Nia's night classes lost a donor. Daisy's took weeks to recover its crowd. I'd tried to fix it, funneling grants through anonymous funds, but it wasn't enough. She deserved more than my money. She deserved my honesty. I waited until the cook-off slowed, the band switching to a softer tune, the crowd thinning as dusk settled in. Nia was packing up her tent, stacking trays with a volunteer, when I approached, my heart thudding like it was my first day at Daisy's. She saw me and froze, her hands pausing on a cooler, her eyes a mix of surprise and wariness. "Ethan," she said, her voice flat but not cold, like she was bracing for impact. "What you doing here?" I took a breath, stepping closer, the grass soft under my shoes. "I heard about the cook-off. Couldn't miss it. You've done something incredible here, Nia." She crossed her arms, her scarf slipping to show the curve of her shoulder, and I had to fight not to get lost in it, in her. "Thanks," she said, her tone guarded, "but I'm not sure why you're really here." I nodded, pulling the notebook from my pocket, its leather worn from years in a drawer. "I owe you the truth," I said, my voice low. "Not just about who I am, but why I kept coming back. Can we talk? Just for a minute?" She hesitated, glancing at the volunteer, a kid who nodded and took over, then motioned to a bench nearby, away from the tents. We sat, the lake reflecting the last of the light, and I felt the weight of every morning I'd spent watching her, every chance I'd missed to be real. "I messed up," I started, my hands tight on the notebook. "I didn't tell you I was ApexTech CEO because I didn't want you to see the money, the noise. I wanted you to see me, Ethan, the guy who grew up in East Point, who felt alive in your diner. But I was wrong. Hiding wasn't protecting you. It was protecting me, and it hurt you." Nia's eyes searched mine, her lips pressed thin. "You don't get it," she said, her voice softer now, raw. "It's not about your money. It's about me trusting you, telling you about my life, my grandma, my dreams, and you sitting there, holding back. I felt like I didn't matter enough for the truth. Her words cut because they were true. I'd thought I was keeping her safe, but I'd made her doubt herself, and that was worse than any headline. You matter more than anything, I said, my throat tight. I love you, Nia. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. You fight for this place, for Etta, for your kids at the cook-off. I should have fought for you by being honest. She looked away, her hands twisting in her lap, and a tear caught the light on her cheek. Love's not enough when it comes with secrets, she said. I've been called names, Ethan, ugly names, because of that article. My classes lost funding. Daisy's lost folks who think I'm some story, and you didn't trust me to handle you. I nodded, the guilt heavy. I know, and I'm sorry. I can't undo it, but I can do this. I held out the notebook, my mom's recipes inside, dumplings, congee, dishes she'd made to keep us going. This is from my mom. She was like you, strong, real, dreaming bigger than her world let her. I want you to have it, for your restaurant, your dream, not because I'm buying you, but because I believe in you. Nia took it, her fingers brushing mine, warm and steady, and I felt that spark again, softer now, like a memory. She opened it, her eyes scanning the faded ink, and her breath hitched. This is personal, she said, looking up. Why now? Because you're leaving, I said, the words heavy. I heard about New Orleans. I don't want you to go thinking you're not enough, not for me, not for Sweet Auburn. You're everything, and I'm done hiding. I'll shout it if you let me. She laughed, a small broken sound, and wiped her eyes. You're crazy, you know that? For you, yeah, I said, smiling through the ache. Always. The silence stretched, the jazz band's last notes fading, and I thought she'd walk away. But then she reached out, her hand resting on mine, her touch a lifeline. I'm not saying yes, she said, her voice steady. I'm not even saying maybe. But this, she held up the notebook. This means something. Don't ruin it by pushing. I nodded, my heart full and raw. I won't. Whatever you need, Nia, I'm here. She stood, tucking the notebook into her jacket, and looked at me, her eyes softer now, like she saw me. Not the CEO, not the liar, but me. Stay sweet, Ethan, she said, echoing her old diner tease, and walked back to the tents, her silhouette strong against the dusk. I didn't follow her. I stayed on that bench, the park emptying around me, and felt something shift. I'd given her my truth, my mom's recipes, a piece of my soul, and it was enough. Not to win her, but to let her shine. The next day, I called a press conference at ApexTech, cameras flashing as I spoke. I've been at Daisy's Diner because it's real, because Nia Carter's real. She's not a story. She's a force, and I'm proud to know her. The clips went viral, some calling it reckless, others calling it love, but I didn't care. I'd chosen her, openly, finally. The board meeting was tense, Richard fuming, but Lila backed me, and the vote held. I stayed CEO for now. Daisy's bounced back, the cook-off's funds lifting Etta's spirits, and Nia's classes found new donors, some through my quiet grants. She didn't take the New Orleans job. She stayed, her roots too deep in Sweet Auburn. I saw her one last time at Daisy's, dropping off a flyer for her cooking demo. She smiled, not a promise, but a start, and I knew we weren't done. Just paused. I'd spent years chasing success, thinking it'd fill the holes my parents' sacrifices left, but Nia taught me something bigger. Love isn't owning someone. It's lifting them up, letting them fly, and finding your own wings in the process. I wasn't the billionaire who saved her. I was the guy she saved, and that was worth everything. That moment by the lake, when Nia took my mom's recipes and gave me a chance to be seen, wasn't the end. It was a beginning. If you've followed Ethan and Nia this far, you know their story's about more than love. It's about truth, fight, and finding home. Stick around for more stories like this, because the best ones are still out there, waiting to be told.